Welcome back, everybody, to episode 2 of We Are South Texas. It's our podcast where we dive deep into the diverse perspectives within the Democratic Party. I'm your host, Richard Gonzalez. I am the chairman of the Hidalgo County Democratic Party. And today we have a very special guest. He is a Valley native. He's a singer, a songwriter, a guitarist, an actor, and somebody who has been one of the leading pioneers in the Tejano music industry. Someone who is not only passionate about music, but passionate about politics and passionate about being a Democrat. Bobby Pulido. Bobby, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Richard.
It's great to have you here, my friend. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. This is the first time I'm on a show talking about politics.
Well, I'm glad to have you here on our podcast talking about it for the first time. But before we get into that, I saw a video recently that had you performing at the Besame Mucho Festival in Austin in front of what looked like an endless sea of people.
Yeah.
How was that experience?
You know, I've been at this 28 years and I've performed in a lot of shows that are big like that. For me, it kind of, what jumped at me was, I'm a Tejano, right? I'm a guy that grew up speaking English. You know, my great-grandmother was born in Brownsville, Texas. So Spanish was not my first language. Now I learned it, I speak it perfectly. My wife's Mexican. And you know, for me to be there in an atmosphere representing my people, and I say my people because we're predominantly English speaking, in a Spanish speaking world, it meant a lot. And more just not just as who I represent, right?
Sure.
Where I come from.
Sure. Now, you know, being in front of that many people, just that adrenaline and that rush, you know, has that changed since the first time you ever had your first performance until now, or does it always stay there? There's always something that's with you.
It's a great feeling, but you know, after when I got down, they were asking me like, how was it? Like, you know, singing in front of, I go, honestly, like, I've always tried to be very even keeled, right?
Yeah.
And so to me, I got to sing there like if it was in front of 20 people or 200 people, right? The shows doesn't change.
Sure.
What you do doesn't change. So you got to keep your emotions under control. If not, they get the best of you, and then you start making mistakes. And,
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, you know, so most people know you as one of the most famous, popular figures in Tejano music, but a lot of people don't know that you're very passionate about politics as well. That's kind of been something that you've grew up with.
Yeah. You know, growing up, my favorite subject was always social studies and government and things like that. And so much so that when I was in high school at Edinburgh High, me and Mito Perez got selected to go represent our school in Texas Boys State in Austin, which is all about government. And so I'm a Boys Stater alum. And I'd like to think that my social studies teacher saw something in me to choose me. And so I went there, and then that kind of really blossomed into me wanting to be a political science major. So I got an academic scholarship to the University of St. Mary's and went to school there with Nef Garcia and Henry Flores at St. Mary's. And so I've always, you know, been up to date on what's going on and have my own viewpoints on we all have solutions, right, in our head, right, as to what we think should be. And so I'm very, very much involved in what's happening.
And so, you know, this podcast is called We Are South Texas.
Yeah.
And it's a show that centers around who we are and what we do as South Texas Democrats. You know, we're different than any other Democrat in the state of Texas and in the country, you know, and I think that maybe people try to portray Democrats, especially Latino Democrats, under one gigantic umbrella. How are South Texas Democrats different than any other Democrat in the country?
We're not a monolith, right? We have to speak to our issues. Predominantly in this area, we used to be the fifth, sixth generation Texans, right? We were there's a monument in Austin, a Tejano monument, and not for the music.
Sure.
Right? As a culture, we've been ingrained in South Texas. Now it's changed, right? We've grown. There's been a lot of people that have come from Mexico that now live here. They brought great food, great music, great culture.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's been a beautiful thing that we've experienced, the growth. But it definitely has evolved. I think that we assimilated a long time ago, Richard, and so they can't treat, sometimes they want to treat, play identity politics and treat all Latinos as, if you talk negatively about immigration, Latinos will say, I'm going to vote against you. And that's not the case. We're a lot more complex than that. When we think about the issues, we're still a very good, God-fearing people.
Absolutely.
I think that we're empathetic and sympathetic to people's plights. But I think we're a difficult people to solve, and you can't put us in that box. And the beauty of the Democratic Party, to be honest with you, is it allows that, right? It allows that. There's John Tester. There's so many conservative Democrats across the spectrum, and very progressive ones, right? That represent districts in, California or New York. We're just different, and it's okay, right? That's the beauty of a democracy, and and I think that it's healthy for us to have that kind of different points of view inside of the party. Sure.
Would you agree that South Texas Democrats are more conservative than most?
Yeah, we are, absolutely, and I might say we break the mold in that we're more culturally conservative.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, so that kind of, that goes against, political,
thinking, yeah.
Yeah. But here it's, we're outdoors. We were a farming community once. That's how the valley it was, that was our main bread and butter, was farming.
Sure.
And so we're very outdoorsy people, God-fearing.
Sure.
We love, we're diehard Catholic down here.
Sure.
There's everything, but I'm saying,
predominantly.
Sure.
We hear a lot in the national media about the word democracy, attack on democracy. Democracy is at stake, and we hear that so much. But what does the word democracy mean to you?
Democracy to me is electing our officials, voicing our opinions through our votes, and putting the people in place there to represent us. And sometimes you win and sometimes you lose.
Sure.
Right? Democracy to me means sometimes accepting something even though you don't like it. Right now conservatives have a 6-3 majority in the Supreme Court, and they basically gutted Roe v. Wade.
Yeah, they did.
And that's because they won the election. Ruth Bader Ginsburg was thinking of retiring. She thought that Hillary had it in the bag and was wrong. And so they got another pick there. And so, I am about democracy. I think right now we're, what I saw on January 6th, really woke, not what the media said, what my eyes saw, right? It's really scary to because what you see there is people that say, okay, I don't agree with what's happening, so I'm going to riot and I'm going to try to, disturb a constitutional event, which is the peaceful transfer of power.
Sure.
And so what I saw, there's 3 days in my life that I felt sick to my stomach.
It's wild.
And it was, when they killed Selena, 9/11 and January 6th. And so that really struck a chord to me. It really bothered me, to be honest with you, to see that and to see basically people that are a reflection of the person that they idolize, that can't accept a democratically held election, that, whatever objections may have went before 63 courts, many of that were Trump judges, and they can't accept it. And it's alarming. If we don't have our democracy, we don't have anything. That's that's our foundation. That's everything.
Sure. So, Bobby, kind of shifting a little bit and talking about some of the issues that are most important here in Hidalgo County. We spoke a little bit on the last episode where access to healthcare was the number one concern amongst the constituents here in Hidalgo County. And, look, you're an Edinburgh native. You've been here to see the shift of the valley in South Texas going from a predominantly farmland, agricultural area to now a more urbanized, modern area that relies a lot on retail and healthcare. But even though the RGV remains predominantly Hispanic at 94%, and despite all that progress, we still face issues on healthcare, inequality, limited access to the basic needs, and transportation challenges. We have high obesity rates, high diabetes rates, and so access to affordable healthcare is something that is very big and concerning amongst Valley residents. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, we need to have access to healthcare, but it needs to be affordable, right? And later maybe we may get into what big industries and big corporations do, but things keep getting more expensive.
Sure.
And it's something that shouldn't be happening. We should have access to healthcare. I think we need to focus on preventative healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason why we're have higher rates of diabetes because of our diets. And the food companies have really come in and instilled themselves into making us less healthy. And it's we have great healthcare and we have great hospitals with the best technologies and good doctors, but it's the price of insurance is through the roof. It's expensive. It's really expensive.
Do you think that educating the people about good food choices and healthier lifestyle, do you think that's something that would benefit South Texas?
Absolutely. I mean, that's it. I mean, that's where the secret sauce is, and of course, things need to be done, up in Washington when it comes to the insurance companies and what they're doing, I mean, we're literally getting caught in the middle between, the game between insurance companies and healthcare. I mean,
sure.
What came first, the chicken or the egg?
Right.
But if you go to a restaurant, right? If you go to a restaurant and you say, I want to go eat, and you eat a burger, and then you say, well, you know what? The burger was $10, but I'm going to leave you $5 because the burger was not that good. Well, that restaurant's going to call the cops and say, you better pay the $10, right? Because that's what they're charging.
Yeah.
But insurance companies get away with telling you, nah, we're not going to pay that. We're going to pay this. And then you got to wait 3 months. So then, by nature, healthcare industry goes, okay, well, I'm going to charge more for it because I know that they're going to try to pay me 50% of what I'm charging.
Sure.
Then all of a sudden, here we are as little old me gets a bill.
Yeah.
And then you have a heart attack now because you see a bill that's astronomical.
Yeah.
And we're getting caught in between this game that's being played. It's not fair to the American public.
Sure. Totally understand that. So, Bobby, immigration reform still is one of the most divisive and complicated issues that we're facing today. Just recently, the Biden administration put together a bipartisan bill to do probably one of the most comprehensive immigration reform bills in recent history, but it was sabotaged by former President Trump.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think he sabotaged it because you got to understand the mindset of Trump is always about winning. So he didn't want to give Biden a win. They've been screaming at the top of their lungs, and they've been showing drone footage of the immigrants crossing, and they're under the bridge as if it was like a Taylor Swift concert.
Sure.
And saying it's an invasion, and you think, finally they have a deal which doesn't provide any type of amnesty for dreamers. No DACA support. It's James Langford was the guy that ran it, and a very conservative guy senator from Oklahoma. and he killed it, and just basically went and said, don't give Biden a win. And I'm thinking to myself, like, so then was it really that big of a crisis if you're willing to wait till November to see what happens? I don't think I don't think it makes any sense, to be honest with you.
I mean, I think when you look at it, here was a chance to finally address one of the biggest problems that we have as a country.
Right.
And instead of coming together and caring about the people, the Republicans cared about Trump.
Of course.
And that just shows the difference between the mindsets of the Democratic Party and the Republican Party.
It's no longer the Republican Party. It's Trump's party. There's a difference, right? There's been a lot of people that used to be in the Republican Party that can't stomach him. And it's I mean, listen, I'm not making anything up, right? It's just, this is just, it is what it is, right? He instilled his daughter-in-law as co-chair in the party. So essentially all the money that's being raised for the party is funneled to him for his legal fees. And it's his party. I'm not saying anything that's not true.
Sure.
I think the writing's on the wall, and essentially it's just whatever it takes to get him elected is what he'll do.
And look, you live here in the Valley. I live here in the Valley. A lot of our listeners and viewers live in the Valley. What is your take on this far right MAGA rhetoric that we live in a war-torn area that's open borders? There's criminals running rampant. There's rapists running loose. There's drugs crossing every day. I mean, we live here. We know that is not where we're at. McAllen is the third safest city in the nation. What do you think about that?
We don't see it, right? And I think what happens a lot, Richard, is that our lives, doesn't matter if you're a Republican or Democrat, are being controlled by algorithms, right? So if I'll give you a case in point, right? Like, people think crime is up. FBI statistics show that crime is down.
Yeah.
But if you look at social media and you see somebody ransacking a store, they keep feeding you that kind of stuff, and you think, man, crime's really bad right now.
Sure.
Right? So social media is really influencing our perceptions, not the reality. Right? And unfortunately, we have a different idea of what and mind you, I'm not saying that we don't need to reform the issue. The question is life as bad as they're making it seem to be?
Sure.
And it's not. Yeah. You could say, well, there's a gazillion migrants that have crossed. Okay, we're at 4% unemployment, or 3.5%. So they're not taking our jobs.
No.
I mean, I want them to do it the right way, right? I am 100% for that. I am not for open borders. I am not, and I don't think any other Democrat that I ever have heard of is for that. But unfortunately, the algorithms rule our lives, man, and that needs to stop, right?
As South Texans, I mean, it's offensive to listen to this, because I mean, you're insulting my hometown, you're insulting my area, and we know that's not what it is. But if you look at where things have been shifting in the state of Texas alone, where the governor and the state Republican Party are basically saying, we do not care what the Biden administration says. We do not care what the law says. We're going to do what we want,
right,
any way we want, and no one's going to do anything about it. What are your thoughts on that? Because they have some of the most restrictive, racially based initiatives in the state of Texas.
Oh my God! Don't get me started on SB4.
Yeah,
that is crazy.
Yeah,
that law is racist.
Yeah,
and believe me, I'm not big into using that R word, but for somebody to look at somebody and be able to say, you know what, I think they look illegal.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, listen, man, in my family, I got morenos and I got güeros. I got everything in my family. And some of my family members and friends, if you looked at them just on the surface, they look Mexican.
Yeah, sure.
Right?
Sure.
And you say, hey, man, imagine if some, law enforcement officer wants to just make their life miserable.
Sure.
They can go say, hey, man, you got your passport? Well, I don't got it. Well, how do I know you're not? That is crazy. That's an overreaction to to a problem that there's a solution that was on the table and they killed it.
I just feel that if you look back in just where we are as a country, 20 years ago, even 15 years ago,
Yeah.
you would have never thought that we'd be dealing with overtly racist laws, because it seemed like it was so unusual. Like, you didn't want to ever see that at the forefront of national politics, but Trump essentially gave people the outlet to let those inner feelings come out, and now they've permeated themselves into actual laws. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it just seems, why am I a moderate? I think moderates, and I'm a moderate Democrat. We need to move at the pace of society. I'm not a progressive because progressives want to have it tomorrow, right? And society doesn't move that fast, and sometimes things take time. When Napster came into my field,
Oh yeah,
they killed the music business, and it took a long time for streaming and everything to come along, and things to kind of reset, right? Things don't happen overnight, and sometimes progressives want to get there right away, right?
Sure.
And the other party wants to take us back into 19, throw it away, and I just don't see that. I think it's we can't go backwards, man, and we can also. We need to move at the pace of what society's needs are.
Sure. So, Bobby, one of the most divisive issues in the entire nation, and one that people take, to heart, gun control, gun safety. Mm-hmm. There has been no substantial gun control laws. There has been fighting from both sides of the aisle. I think most people would like to see, background checks, waiting periods, red flag laws. But look, we just had Congressman Vicente Gonzalez on our first episode, and, he said he's a huge gun collector.
I'm a gun user.
You're a gun user. You're a South Texas guy.
I don't collect them. Mine gets shot.
Where do you stand on the issue of gun control reform? What are your thoughts?
I sit back and I look at all the stuff that's going on in Congress, and I think it's poor legislating, to be honest with you. On one hand, you'll have people say, ban AR-15s. I'm against a ban, but I'll explain why. Right? I don't think banning ARs is like, does it help save lives? Yes. The statistics don't lie. It does. But it's kind of like cutting your toe off to solve your ingrown toenail. Well, does it solve your ingrown toenail if you cut your toe off? Yeah. But is it a good thing? Well, probably not. We've had AR-15s even before you started seeing mass shootings. We have a mental health crisis.
Yeah.
And it's convenient sometimes for the other side, Republicans, to say, like, we have a mental health crisis. It's not the guns. And then Greg Abbott defunds mental health by $200 million, right? That doesn't make any sense.
You're defeating the purpose of everything.
Well, the truth is there is a mental health crisis, and gun control should be tied into identifying the individuals that are most likely to commit those atrocities, right? And also, not only that, is not allow them to buy guns, and also get them mental health help. We used to have mental health institutions, a lot of them in the 50s and the 60s, and towards the 70s they started to go down, and now there's hardly any. And so, what are we doing with the people that need the help?
So, if it was up to you, if Bobby Pulido could put a bill in front of Congress and say, "Guys, this is my idea. This is how we can change some things," what would that be?
Well, I think that there's enough societal awareness right now of the issue. If you go to a bank, Richard, and you go get a loan, right? You go to that bank and they're going to say, okay, give me your tax returns, but they also want references, right? Sure. Because they're not just trusting your word. They want other people's also to see if, hey, does Richard can he afford to pay this loan back? You know, what kind of person is Richard? We need that system based on AR-15s, right? And semi-automatic weapons that you can create more damage with. I'm not going to call them assault rifles because that's something that happens too. It kind of pisses off Republicans when somebody that doesn't know about guns calls them that.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, we need to involve society. You know, the Uvalde shooter wanted his sister to purchase him a gun when he was 17.
Yeah.
And his sister said, heck no, you're crazy.
Yeah.
His family knew that he had issues. Mm-hmm. Most of us know when somebody has an issue, and there's enough societal consciousness to say, you know what, I won't give you a reference. I'm not going to vouch for you because society knows you better than the guy selling you your weapon at Academy. He doesn't know. And our system of background checks and everything has a fundamental flaw in that it asks you the question and takes your word for it.
So somebody else.
Yeah.
A disinterested third party.
Como dice el dicho, estarás loco, pero tonto no. Right?
Yeah.
So, you could be mentally ill or whatever, and of course, that you're going to say, okay, I'm not mentally ill. Oh, I've never had this problem and I've never done that. So
self-serving.
It's self-serving and it's a flaw. Mm-hmm. And so right now, I don't feel that a lot of 99.9% of gun owners that follow the law and don't commit these atrocities should be punished.
Sure.
Because we can't identify the individuals most likely to commit these atrocities. Sure. And I think it's lazy legislating, to be honest with you. So when I hear red flag laws, Richard, I'm not for red flag laws because red flag laws, what they do is they allow an ex to come back and create havoc. You know, if my ex knows I like guns and wants to make my life miserable, they can say, he mentioned one time that he would shoot up something, even if it's a lie.
Absolutely.
Right? And it's going to create a lot of havoc. Plus, that's after the fact that he has the gun. Right? So the question is, what can we do to prohibit those certain type of loners? There's a profile. The majority of these people were loners, didn't have any friends, didn't socialize. And that's how they can commit these kinds of atrocities because they get dehumanized by the internet.
Sure.
Right? Social media is really contributing to this epidemic that we're having with mental health.
Sure. Just, I think maybe looking at gun control from a different perspective and not looking at it as in the way of saying, well, I'm going to infringe on your civil liberties.
That's exactly right.
We need to be smart about people's mental states.
That's right.
And still follow the Second Amendment and still give people all their liberties.
And more importantly too, Richard, is don't let them purchase those firearms and also get them mental help. Because
give them the resources they need.
They need the resources, man. And it's not just punishing and putting them off to one side. It's trying to rehabilitate them. Sure. Right. And it's just the right thing to do. Sure. So when I see all the legislating going on, none of it addresses that.
Sure.
They just kind of talk about more background checks and more this and more that.
Sure.
And it's like, well, are you doing it? Are you doing it the right way, or I just don't agree with it.
So you had mentioned earlier that you're an avid gun user.
I am.
And yes. there's a YouTube 500-yard blackjack challenge that you are currently leading.
Yeah.
Can you tell our listeners and our viewers, what that is?
It's a long range competition, and they can see it on YouTube, the Blackjack Challenge. And I started out being a hunter when I was little, right? And now I just kind of shoot steel plates. So it's more of a shooting sport thing for me. During the pandemic, I had nothing to do. They canceled my concerts, right? Yes. So there was no more shows. There was nothing. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go out and spend time at the ranch because they were saying, social distancing and all of that. So I went to the ranch and I got really good at shooting long range.
Good.
Shot, I shoot 1,000 yards. So yeah, it's something, most of the kids that are raised in the atmosphere of the outdoors, right? Whether it be hunting, fishing, and like that, tend to be the most, honorable people that, you don't see that kind of violence or crime that goes on in that, because they're taught to respect firearms, right? Sometimes you get kids that are not raised around it, and dad has a firearm in the closet, and they find it, and then they shoot themselves by accident and things like that, right? So I've always been raised around them. My kids have. We're not the kind of people that love to come and pose. You know, I hate that, right?
Yeah.
You see the
typical Republican pose
with like I'm Billy Badass, right? Yeah. Well, I think you look like a prick doing that, right? I mean, that's my, I don't do that, right? I don't have to prove and show that I'm this or I'm that, right? I believe I believe in our constitutional right to firearms. I believe in that, but there is nuance to it, right? You can't own hand grenades. You know that there has to be some type of limits. You know, it's a well-regulated militia. Right? Well-regulated, and so it's important to to also try to find middle ground and reach consensus.
Awesome. So, Bobby, another big issue that we come across is inflation. A pocketbook issue, something that affects everyday Americans. You know, what are your thoughts on basically tackling corporate greed? Because if you look at inflation, corporate profiteering was at a record $3.3 trillion, which has led to a lot of these things. But if you look at what's happened under the Biden administration, you have unemployment down. We just had record number job creation for the month of March. So much so that the Republicans were literally speechless. They couldn't say anything. But corporate greed, what are your thoughts?
Well, it exists. It's something that unbridled capitalism is not what we want, right? Or crony capitalism. We also don't want that. I'm a capitalist. But unfortunately, it's a part of that. And I think it goes, hand in hand also with the deficits. Inflation happened worldwide after COVID. After the pandemic, it happened everywhere. Every country experienced it. I think we've handled it in the upper tier of some of the best, right? As far as that's concerned. But I'm a fiscal conservative, right?
Absolutely,
I believe that I run my house conservatively, right? I run my finances conservatively. I don't believe in buying a bunch of stuff. As a culture, we're really ingrained with consumerism into buying things we don't need. And think about how our tax code is written, right? You get to write off everything if it's business related. Donald Trump flies in a 747 airplane, but it's all deductible. So he won't pay taxes, right? So don't hate the player, hate the game. And the game is not, it's not, when you say tax the rich, well, by most people's standards, I'm considered rich, right? But I'm not considered rich compared to Donald Trump. There's a big difference, right? The guys that are billionaires and, are multi-gazillionaires, that's different, right? Than a guy that says, okay, I'm a millionaire. Okay, you make money, but not like that, right? And it's getting to the point where there's a big crunch being felt on the middle class, where even people that are just millionaires, right? You say not many, right? But there's just people that are just a millionaire are paying, along with the middle class. The people that can't afford to pay taxes don't pay. And the people that are super uber rich, instead of giving it to the government, they pay tax lawyers to go find them all these deductions and then don't pay anything and contribute anything to the country. And so the system is what's causing it, right?
And so Democrats have been trying to basically shape the tax code to better suit everyday Americans.
Correct.
Where do you stand on that? What are your thoughts?
Well, listen, when Trump was president, he had a huge tax cut, right? And he put through, that was his priority. He put through a huge tax cut. But they want to have their cake and eat it too, right? He put us almost $8 trillion into the hole, because the spending stayed the same because he wants to be loved. But yet the government now couldn't collect a bunch of money that it used to collect from them. And if you care about deficits, you also look at the facts that the last, and to me, the best president ever as a president was Bill Clinton, actually ran a balanced budget, right? And he did it because he worked with Newt Gingrich, who was the Speaker of the House. They worked on welfare reform, right? And they worked on a lot of other issues. So Democrats can be fiscally conservative and be responsible. I think right now we've been conditioned to think that conservatives are good on the economy and Democrats just want to spend. That's not the case. That's not what I see, right? And I don't think that, Bush Jr., W, put us with the Iraq War, put us into the hole, man. And then Obama was trying to dig us out, right? Yeah. And then Trump went and put us back in it, and now Biden's trying to dig us out. And if you look at it right now, at the pace that Biden is going as far as deficits, it's going to be less than what Trump put us in, right? A Democratic president.
And so, if you look at administrations over the past few years, recent history, what party would you say has done a better job at reducing that federal deficit? Republicans or Democrats?
The Democrats, for sure.
And it's in the numbers. It's in the data.
The numbers don't lie, man. It's undisputed. Numbers don't lie, right? And so, to me, that's I believe. Listen, man, we need to curtail our deficit spending. We need to buckle up our straps and bootstraps. And as people, we have to also get a little bit of what John F. Kennedy said. That's not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country, right? And so we're going to have to buckle up our bootstraps because at the pace that we're going, something has to give, right? And so I'm all for helping people, but we got to also help ourselves. And this is something that I think is that I see in the horizon coming, and we got to address it.
Well, Bobby, thank you so much for coming and joining us here today, man. I mean, we got to learn a lot about you, man, and kind of what you believe and your take on some of these issues. And we're very honored to have been the first podcast where you talk about politics for the first time.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Well, everybody, thank you so much for joining us today on episode 2 of We Are South Texas. We look forward to seeing you again with the next special guest next month. And if you have any comments, questions, concerns, please reach out to us. If there's any topics you want to talk about, please let us know. Give this episode a like, give it a share, and help us get this message across, guys. So until next time, I'll see you then.